What's up guys, my name is Ace, and with the Season 3 Reloaded update for Modern Warfare 3, we saw tons of weapon balancing, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering these in great detail to the best of my ability. Now, a couple things to point out. First off, there appears to be some problems with the patch notes themselves where they're not aligning with actual testing, or there's just obvious typos in there. I'll try to point those out as I go along. And then another thing to point out is there's certain details with Modern Warfare 2 guns that were adjusted with this update where I simply didn't have pre-patched data. Because for the Modern Warfare 2 guns, I don't store nearly as much data as I do for the Modern Warfare 3 ones. But with that out of the way, let's dive right into this. And the first thing to point out is every single one of the Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles, aside from the FR556, saw nerfs to their hipfire. And with this, it would be a little excessive to go through every single one of these individually and make a graphic for each one. So instead, I basically just wanted to show you the averages and what this is going to tend to do to these Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles. As we can see here, our average minimum hipfire spread went from 2.6 degrees up to 3.1 degrees, so that's quite noticeable. When standing still, your hipfire spread will be quite a bit bigger on average with the Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles, whereas our maximum average, this is our maximum while sliding or firing our gun in full auto while moving. This went from an average of 7.2 degrees to 7.4 degrees for the Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles. So the easiest way to look at this is just in general, with Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles, your hipfire is going to be at least a little bit worse. Then getting into the individual assault rifles, the DG-56 saw another nerf, surprisingly, and what they did here is they added a damage range and then they nerfed our minimum damage range, so now we actually drop off to a 6-shot kill beyond 38.1 meters, whereas previously we always had a 5-shot kill potential. And this one was a little bit surprising. I really don't see the DG-56 as a problem, but it is going to be noticeably worse at longer ranges now. Then let's talk about the other Modern Warfare 3 burst assault rifle, the FR556. This one saw a handful of buffs. With this, our aim down sight time was improved from 260 milliseconds down to 250. Our sprint out time was also improved from 231 milliseconds down to 216. Our aim walking speed was improved a little bit up to 2.9 meters per second. And then finally, for the base gun, our bullet velocity was also improved up to 720 meters per second. On top of that, and more importantly, the FR556 got a full-on attachment overhaul. So every one of the barrels, the stocks, the combs, the magazines, and the RMT rear grip, they all got adjusted for the FR556. And unfortunately, it would be unreasonable for me to cover every single one of these attachment changes in this video. I've got a lot of weapon balancing to get through. This would probably take 10 minutes on its own. And realistically, it's not going to be that impactful for each individual attachment. So all I can say here is you may want to start from scratch with your FR556 builds and start building them again from the ground up, since almost all of the attachments are simply different now. Now after that, things are a little bit weird in the patch notes here. We're still in the assault rifle category, but they mentioned the Lachmann-762, which is a battle rifle, saw some range changes. So it seems like they misplaced that in the wrong category, but then when I look at the stats for the Lachmann-762, it doesn't align with what they're saying, either pre-patch or post-patch in this section. So I don't know what this section means. I also checked other guns to see if maybe they just mistitled it. I thought maybe they meant Lachmann 556, but that doesn't align either. So I don't know what this means. I don't know which gun this is actually applying to, but it doesn't appear to be a Lachmann gun. Then after that, with the M13C, we saw some range buffs. Both of our 5-shot kill ranges have been improved by a noticeable margin here. And on top of this, we saw a bit of a buff to our leg multipliers, which doesn't change our shots to kill potential. It just makes it a little more forgiving if you happen to mix the odd leg shot in here or there. Overall, this is still not a great gun in my opinion, but it is a little bit better and more consistent now post-patch. Then let's get into the battle rifle category, and we did see a nerf to the SOA Subverter at longer ranges. It's still just as good up close, still a really good close range battle rifle, but now, beyond 38.1 meters, we will drop off to a 6-shot kill, whereas previously it had an infinite 5-shot kill potential. So that really solidifies this as more of a close-range battle rifle. Then after that, with the MTZ-762, they just decreased our aim-down sight time from 280 milliseconds down to 260 milliseconds, so a slight buff there. Then with the Jak Thunder LMG Kit for the Sidewinder, in the patch notes they mentioned they decreased the aim-down sight benefit by 20 milliseconds. And this is strange because this kit doesn't give you a benefit to your aim down sight speed, and it never has. And not only that, your aim down sight speed is exactly the same pre-patch or post-patch when using this kit. So I don't know what's going on with the patch notes here, but this just doesn't make sense. Then the Modern Warfare 2 battle rifles finally see some love. With the FTAC Recon, they mentioned our minimum damage was increased from 45 to 50, but that's actually our maximum damage, so a little typo there. But our maximum damage is now 50 in the leg, and that means in that maximum damage range, it's now a guaranteed 3-shot kill anywhere in the body, whereas pre-patch, 2 out of those 3 shots had to hit the torso or arm. And then in full auto mode, we also saw a buff to our maximum damage to the point where we can now get a 3-shot kill to the body as long as 2 out of those 3 shots hit the upper torso or arm. So that gives us a solid time to kill potential, and the FTAC Recon should be quite noticeably better now after this update, at least in close quarter situations. Then with the SO14, we also saw some damage adjustments. In semi-auto, pre-patch, we could only get a 3-shot kill in the maximum damage range. And again, we had to hit 2 out of our 3 shots to the upper torso or arm to get that 3-shot kill. Now, in that maximum damage range in semi-auto, it's a 3-shot kill anywhere in the body. And we now have a 3-shot kill potential in the second damage range as well. Although it is unforgiving, you can't hit lower torso or legs, otherwise it will be a 4-shot kill. And in full auto, this also applies. In our second damage range, we can get a 5-shot kill, whereas previously it was a 6-shot kill in that range. On top of this, we saw some handling buffs. Our aim down sight time went from 290 milliseconds down to 270 milliseconds, which is nice. And it's a similar story with our sprint to fire time. This went from 307 milliseconds down to 261. And that wraps it up for the battle rifles. Let's get into the SMGs now, and the HRM-9 saw some nerfs. The first nerf was to recoil. They mentioned they increased our horizontal recoil and our vertical recoil just by a few percentage points. And looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, it's definitely a little bit worse post-patch, but I wouldn't call that a really significant nerf to our recoil. It might be just slightly less accurate than you experienced pre-patch. Although it was interesting, with my tests here, my initial recoil seemed lower post-patch, but that could have just been a fluke with the recoil pattern. And then on top of that, for the HRM-9, we also saw a very slight nerf to our maximum damage range. It went from 12.7 meters down to 11.2 meters. Realistically, this shouldn't have a very big impact on the overall power of the HRM-9. As for the AMR9 though, we did see some very noticeable buffs again, which is excellent to see. The first thing to point out here is our 5-shot kill potential now extends into that second damage range, so it extends beyond 20 meters now, which is excellent. And on top of that, they adjusted our body multipliers. Previously, our bonus zone was only the upper torso and upper arm, whereas now it's upper torso and anywhere in the arm. So it does include the forearms and hand now. So in general, this gun should be more consistent and just a little bit better overall. Next, we have a slight buff to the HRM-9's range. As you can see there, our 6-shot kill potential has been increased a little bit. This isn't a massive change by any means, but it was a bit of a surprising change to me because I always thought this was one of the better SMGs in the game. And if anything, seeing it in the patch notes, I expected it to be a nerf rather than a buff. But after that, we've got the WSP Swarm, and this one just saw a very slight nerf to its 5-shot kill potential, that maximum damage range. It went from 6.9 meters down to 5.6 meters. And then finally for SMGs, the WSP-9 saw quite a nice buff to its sprint out time. It went from 110 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time down to 66 milliseconds. That's a pretty big adjustment there and definitely going to be noticeable on the WSP-9. And now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the shotgun category. And the first thing that changed was the new kit for the KV Broadside, the Jak Jawbreaker kit that turns it effectively into a marksman rifle. The first thing they did here, and this was quite a drastic thing, is they eliminated our aim down sight spread while using this kit. And as we can see, pre-patch at 40 meters, it was basically a guessing game as to where your shot was going to go, whereas post-patch, there's no longer any spread, and any deviation you're seeing there, that's just from idle sway. So it's going to be a lot more accurate there. They also significantly decreased our hipfire spread penalty from 100% down to 30%, so your hipfire is going to be much more practical now. And on top of this, they're now allowing you to use muzzle attachments because those weren't working previously. I mean, you could put a muzzle on, but it just wouldn't actually work in the game. It would work in the firing range, but not in actual matches. Now it should be working properly for you. So some pretty significant buffs to the Jak Jawbreaker kit. Next up for the Riveter, they mentioned they decreased our aim down sight spread by 10%, which should be a buff, but looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, if anything, it looks noticeably worse post-patch compared to pre-patch, which is the opposite of what you'd expect. This could just be down to inherent randomness of the spread, but honestly, the difference looks consistent enough that this looks like they actually nerfed this rather than buffed it. And then with the ball ammunition, they mentioned they increased our aim down sight spread by 10%, which should be a nerf. And with this one, it actually does appear to be the case. It does look a little bit worse than pre-patch while using the ball ammo. However, on top of that with the ball ammo, we saw a very significant buff to damage. And I don't think the patch notes really do it justice here. Based on my tests, within reasonable shotgun ranges at least, within about 30 meters, with the ball ammunition, this is now quite a consistent 3-shot kill, as long as you're using a choke to tighten up that spread nicely. Whereas pre-patch, it was only possible to get a 3-shot kill out to 5.9 meters. So a very, very significant buff here to the ball ammo on the Riveter. And you may want to give that a shot now post-patch. After that, let's get into what I consider to be the highlight of this update. The DG-58 LSW LMG saw a couple very significant buffs. And the first buff was to our recoil, which as you can see here, looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, It is considerably more accurate now post-patch. There's not a whole lot of recoil to worry about now. However, that's not even the best part of this update for this gun. They also buffed its damage values to the point where in the maximum damage range, as long as we're hitting all 4 of our shots to the torso and arms, which is reasonably easy to do, especially with quite an accurate gun, we're capable of getting a 4-shot kill potential for a 255 millisecond time to kill, which is a very, very competitive time to kill. And that's actually the fastest time to kill for the Modern Warfare 3 LMGs, and on top of that, we don't have an open bolt delay to worry about with this gun. Additionally, with the patch notes, they once again had that typo where they said minimum damage, but they actually meant maximum damage. However, the minimum damage did also change, even though that part wasn't actually mentioned in the patch notes. And beyond that 4-shot kill, it's now going to be a 5-shot kill anywhere in the body, whereas previously it was a 6-shot kill. We couldn't get a 5-shot kill to the body beyond that range. And as a result of these buffs, I actually consider the DG-58 LSW to be the best LMG in the entire game now. So this is definitely a gun to be revisiting if you haven't done so yet. I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised with this update. After that though, sticking to the LMG category, the TAQ Eradicator saw some handling buffs. Our aim down sight time was improved very slightly, just by 10 milliseconds, and our sprint out time was improved fairly noticeably from 252 milliseconds down to 210 milliseconds. And then finally for LMGs, there was a slight adjustment to the Holger 26. All they did here is they buffed our neck damage multiplier to match our headshot multiplier. And this is significant for the Holger 26 because in the maximum damage range, you only needed to mix 1 headshot in with torso or arm shots to reduce the number of shots to kill. And now that's extended to the neck as well. So it's just going to make it a lot more consistent to get that 4-shot kill for a 255 millisecond time to kill, just like the DG-58 can up close to the body. So while this is a buff to the Holger, it's not nearly enough to keep up with the buff to the DG-58. But in either case, let's get into the marksman rifle category, and there was just one adjustment here. This was to the MTZ Interceptor, and for some reason, they nerfed the range again on this gun. Our maximum damage range, where it's a guaranteed 2-shot kill anywhere in the body, this has been reduced from 38 meters down to just over 30 meters. And honestly, I don't know why they keep nerfing this gun. Yes, it was too powerful at one point, but they have nerfed it down quite a bit to the point where it's not that great, in my opinion at least, and yet here's another nerf for it. As for the sniper rifles, the Moors did see a couple nerfs. Now, the first thing they did here is they increased our aim down sight time from 560 milliseconds up to 580 milliseconds, so a bit of a nerf there. And then on top of this, they decreased our lower leg and foot damage multipliers, which doesn't have any impact on the default Moors. It's still the same 1-shot kill zones for that. However, this was actually designed to target the HVP ammo, which is the ammo that previously allowed us to get a 1-shot kill anywhere in the body at any range. Now, it's still got an amazing 1-shot kill zone, but you won't be able to get that 1-shot kill anymore below the knee. And then on top of that, with this ammo type, they did increase the bullet velocity penalty from 15% up to 20%. So just in general, they did dial this back a bit, but at the end of the day, I still consider the Moors to be the best sniper rifle in the game. And that's it for the primary weapons that were changed. However, we also saw a lot of adjustments to secondaries. And with this, just like the Hipfire changes to the assault rifles, this is the type of thing that just applied to almost all of the pistols. However, instead of Hipfire, they buffed movement speeds for all of the pistols in the game. Now, most of these were just base movement speeds to our walking speed, and the buff ranged from 2 to 4%. However, they did buff our sprint speed for the 50GS, the X12, and the GS Magna. On top of that, we saw some buffs for the Akimbo attachment on the 9mm Daemon. With this, they removed the 10% movement speed penalty, they decreased our hipfire spread, both minimum and maximum, and they removed the previous damage penalty. And now the only penalty you get to your damage is to the head. So previously, you couldn't get a 3-shot kill while using Akimbo with this, whereas now you can. Unfortunately, when it comes to this one, it's one of those cases where I don't have all the data collected for a specific attachment on a Modern Warfare 2 gun that basically nobody used. But just know, Akimbo on the 9mm Daemon should be significantly better now than it was pre-patch. And then finally, the last change that was made here to weapons was to the new Gladiator melee weapon. They decreased our standing lunge distance to 1.2 meters. Now, if you test this in real matches, you actually see slightly longer ranges if you like ping the target and then melee them. And I think that's just due to the fact that the ping goes to the middle of the target rather than the closest edge of the target to you. So realistically speaking, when you're testing this in match, previously, my tested lunge range with the Gladiator was 2.2 meters, and now it's just equal to the combat knife, the karambit, and the gutter knife at 1.7 meters. And unfortunately, that just means the Gladiator doesn't really stand out much in any way, and it's pretty much just the same as those other knives. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for all of the weapon balancing that took place with the Season 3 Reloaded updates. Lots of big changes in there. I would say the standouts are, of course, that DG-58 LSW LMG. Definitely give that one a shot. That may actually be a new meta weapon right now. And then on top of that, the AMR9 should feel really nice as well. I honestly thought the AMR9 was getting into a really good place before this patch, and it should be even more consistent after this update. Now, of course, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about weapon balance in Season 3 Reloaded so far? Are you generally happy with these changes they made, or not so much? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.